Hi, I'm King Uke, and I watch Wake Up Tahoe.
On today's show, we have sustainability expert Gary Bowen talking about sustainability and saving the Lake Tahoe environment. Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, Jack. Nice to see you again.
Wake Up Tahoe starts now.
Coming to you from the 12th floor of the Mont Bleu Resort Casino and Spa on the beautiful south shore of Lake Tahoe, this is Wake Up Tahoe with Drew Murin. Wake Up Tahoe is filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Good morning and welcome to Wake Up Tahoe. We're here today with sustainability expert Gary Bowen. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, Gary?
Well, first of all, I want to say I love the term Wake Up Tahoe. That's a great metaphor for not only Wake Up Tahoe, where we are after the presidential summit, but also Wake Up World, because there's lots of issues that we're going to need to deal with.
Yeah, I've always loved Wake Up Tahoe as a show name. It's a great name, and I really want to thank Drew for giving me the opportunity to interview you. You know, ever since I met you about 2 years ago, I've wanted to interview you long form for so long. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I guess we'll start with the fact that I'm a local. I go back here 50 plus years, and I won't go add any more onto that. But I have 10 years with Bill Harrah years ago. I didn't work for the people running it now. I worked for Bill Harrah. So I like to think I learned from the best in the business. When I left, I was in public relations, so in this case, I guess that gave me some sensibility for dealing with the world at large and with people. But it also means that I understand this place in particular quite well, above and beyond what's going on in the outside world.
You've done a lot for sustainability and the environment here in Tahoe. Can you tell us a little about what you've done to promote sustainability here in Tahoe?
Well, basically, I guess I would have to say, in one of the businesses that I was in when I left Tahoe was in woodworking, wood products, very specific type of wood product, and I work with woods from around the world. And what inspired me actually was some flaws that were showing up in lumber, where everybody was pointing fingers at each other about what went wrong with the finishing or the finished product. And it turns out that it was the growth of the tree that had some issues in it. Notably, the last 50, 60 years, things from the air had been getting into the tree. That's what caused the problem. It wasn't anybody else's particular fault. It was the tree itself. Yeah. So I got inspired when I was back here into looking into forest health issues because of that. And one of my particular areas was in forest health, and that's what prompted my first appearance at the presidential summit all those years ago. Yep. Was really based on the idea of where we are now in a smoke-filled window behind us is the fact that catastrophic fire is certainly still a danger here, as it is in the 10 western states, and as from Vice President Gore this past Monday, there's 50 fires in the western United States right now. So forest health and those kinds of issues are all about air quality. Yeah. They're all tied together, in other words. So that's what inspired me coming back here, what to do in the world of sustainability.
And I'm sure forest health is a very important subject that our audience can relate to right now. The Rim Fire just got up to something like 200 square miles. I looked at the satellite picture of it last night, and it was bigger than the Sacramento metropolitan area. The fire area was bigger and brighter than Sacramento on the satellite photo. And living in a forest, it is always my worst fear that somebody is going to accidentally cause a human-caused wildfire and burn this beautiful natural treasure we live in down. And I've done my part by making Wildfire Awareness Week videos. The user can click on the annotation that they see on their screen right now and see all about wildfire awareness and defensible space. And I'm all for protecting that, but how do we promote wildfire awareness, defensible space, and keeping our forests healthy so that they don't burn down in the first place?
Well, I think out in the world, because we'll be talking about that a little later, but out in the world, I think the awareness is beginning to finally crack through, if you will, that a lot of the issues with the world around us are all tied together, number one. And number two, forest health is directly related to climate change in the sense that the healthier the forest, and here we are with the forest health issue, the healthier the forest, the more CO2 they absorb. So it's not so much the fire or the causes of the fire, it's more about the conditions that are allowing more fires that have to do with sustainability. And people's decision-making process is going to end up coming down to the every single thing they do pretty much every day until they get used to doing it otherwise.
Yeah, and I got to say personally, living in this delicate environment of Lake Tahoe is the thing that personally convinced me about global warming. Around 1997, I was on the fence about whether global warming was real or not. So I started looking at the environment around me. And at the time, I noticed the lake level was receding because there just wasn't snow. Every year, there was variation, of course, in the snowfall, but overall, it was getting less and less snow, and the forests were getting drier and drier, and so we would see huge wildfires like Angora in 2007. We would see, when I was a kid, the Tallac Cross was pretty much always visible on Mount Tallac in the summer. Now that glacier is gone every summer. It's barely a snow glacier anymore. It's not even a glacier anymore. It's basically snow that persists into the midsummer and not into the rest of the year, when it used to be a year-round glacier. In my childhood, and I'm not that old, I'm only 32, I can remember that the Tallac Cross was pretty much a year-round glacier, and it isn't anymore. And just seeing that happen with my own eyes was the thing that personally convinced me that global warming was occurring, at least locally.
Well, and I think because we're going to talk about the most recent recurrence of the presidential summit from 16 years ago, I would say that I wasn't so much following strictly Vice President Gore, even though he's actually been looking at CO2 issues since his college days, 30 some odd years ago. Yeah. That just added on to what he was saying. I ventured out into forests themselves, water quality issues, lots of other toxic chemicals. That the entire range is where it's all tied together, and why we're going to have to be very careful as our own species of human beings.
Well, speaking of Vice President Gore, I'm going to cut now to an excerpt from Al Gore's speech where he talks about Lake Tahoe being a model for the world and how we can win the conversation on global warming. So when we come back, Gary Bowen and I will talk about winning the conversation on global warming and the environment.
Final story, when I was of the age when the civil rights movement entered that hopeful phase, I remember when President Kennedy issued the challenge in 1961, I was 13 years old, to put a person on the moon and bring him back safely in 10 years. And I remember many of my elders at that time believing that that was a mistake. Would waste a lot of money, probably couldn't be done, so outlandish. Just as outlandish today as saying we can solve global warming. And many people said we shouldn't have done that. But 8 months and 2 months later, Neil Armstrong set foot on the surface of the moon. And the moment he did so, there was a great cheer that went up in the mission control of NASA in Houston. And the average age of those systems engineers that day was 26 years old, which meant their average age when they heard that challenge was 18. And you talk to today's 18-year-olds, and they cannot imagine that we will not undertake this challenge. The future of Lake Tahoe is for them. And when they get to be my age, they'll look back, and depending on the world they inherit, they'll ask one of two questions. If they see the progress at Lake Tahoe reversed, and because of global warming, it goes in the wrong direction again. If they see coastal cities flooded and storms wiping out whole areas, and failures of governance and agriculture and all the rest, environmental refugees, they would be justified in looking back at us and asking, what were you thinking? But if they come to the shores of Lake Tahoe and they see the water all the way down 75 or 100 feet, and they look at the majesty of the lake and see the clear skies, and they see communities in renewal and millions of new jobs being created in renewable energy and efficiency, and they feel a sense of hope in their hearts, and look at their own children and believe their lives are going to be better still. I want them to look back at us in this day and time here at Lake Tahoe and say, how did you find the courage and the moral authority to stand up and work together and do the right thing? And part of the answer will be people came across all lines at Lake Tahoe and became a part of a movement to make political will a renewable resource. Thank you.
And now here's Adra with the weather.
There it is. 4 guns up. Filipino element of love going down the snake side. Plate feet going through the center.
Good morning and welcome to Wake Up Tahoe. Your weather today being brought to you by the National Speedball League. Paintball at its finest. Bam, 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 bam. It's 79 degrees today and partly cloudy. But all I see is smoke and haze. So you're going to be looking at that sunny sky supposedly for the next few days, and highs of 80s, lows in the 40s. But hazy and smoky. So until that clears, we probably won't be seeing any sun peeking through the skies. But it's still a great day to get out and enjoy your outdoor activities.
Welcome back to Wake Up Tahoe. I'm here again with Gary Bowen, global sustainability expert. If you want to email Gary, you can get a hold of him at tahoefuture@gmail.com. Gary, you were at the Tahoe Summit and you wrote an article for Lake Tahoe News about it. Tell me a little bit about what you wrote and what you got out of Al Gore's speech.
Well, simply put, we're on a local level here. When people go, and I believe there was like 700 plus people there that day. Most of them were local, some were not, but most of them were local. But what really intrigued me about his speech was after 16 years, he brought a level of enthusiasm that we're not seeing here currently, above and beyond what he had to say factually or what his thoughts were. He was quite enthusiastic and quite fired up, which I think is sort of the missing element here, not only amongst the most recent previous summits, but in this case, the whole issue of sustainability.
Yeah, I was very impressed with Al Gore's speech, and I want to thank Glenn Beck, of all people, for embedding Al Gore's speech, though the article Glenn Beck wrote about what Al Gore said was very misleading, and I don't agree with what he said about Al Gore. That said, I got to give him props for having the journalistic integrity to link to a full version of the speech so the audience could make up their own minds. And if you want to see the full version of Al Gore's speech, just click on the annotation below, and you'll be able to see Al Gore's speech on the Lake Tahoe Summit playlist so that it'll automatically play all the other videos of all the other people who spoke at Lake Tahoe Summit too. You wrote an article for Lake Tahoe News about it, so tell me a little bit about your article and the response it received.
Well, that particular article, I wanted to make reference to the enthusiasm, number one. I also wanted to make reference to the fact that the summits are always about trying to garner a certain level of government support for the Lake Tahoe Basin, in the sense that the Lake Tahoe Basin hasn't been able to really garner it for itself. And usually it involves money, but in this particular case, I don't believe money is the entire equation, because, of course, if we've spent $1 billion plus over that ensuing period of 16, 17 years now.
1.6 billion, by the way.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the number keeps going up. A couple of years ago, it was 1.1 billion, so I don't know where all the extra money supposedly came from. But the issue for me is that we still have a lot of work to do, and it's not just about rebuilding what we don't like. I personally think it's more... Right now, my impression is we're trying to bring Lake Tahoe into the 80s, and we really need to bring them into the 21st century.
I totally agree.
Because the same amount of money will accomplish a lot more if we think about bringing it further.
Yeah, and I was very impressed about what Gore had to say about winning the conversation and making it a social standard that disbelief in global warming is not okay the way that racism is not okay. And seeing some of the response that Glenn Beck's viewers left on my YouTube feed, I'll put them up on the screen, and how your readers responded to your article. How do we deal with the fact that some people are opposed for whatever reason. I can understand being opposed to something because it's not environmental enough, or being opposed to a plan because you think it's not well supported. But in Al Gore's case, I mean, if anybody in the audience has seen An Inconvenient Truth, he argues the case very compellingly from very real data. And yet, a lot of these people simply dismiss it out of hand because of who he is.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I'll start right at that particular point, because I think somewhere in my article I made reference to the fact that it will soon reach a point where it really doesn't matter for purposes of our audience in this room whether they're we've become way too politicized, and in this case it's going to be, in terms of sustainability, it's soon going to reach a point where it doesn't matter really which side you're on, because that's the nature of my global work. It doesn't matter what country you're from, it doesn't matter what religion you are, it doesn't matter what political party you're with. You're affecting the world, and no, it's not a matter of who you pick for president or prime minister or something. It's a matter that all of us are part of a species that is causing quite a lot of damage on the face of the earth, and we're causing a lot of damage to a lot of the other species who can't speak for themselves.
Yeah, and I got to say I was very impressed in the Lake Tahoe Summit by how bipartisan it is. Nevada's Governor Brian Sandoval has always been a strong environmentalist. He served on the TRPA board, and he has been a very strong supporter of Lake Tahoe. He passed the Save Lake Tahoe Act recently. He recently signed a fire compact with Governor Brown to manage wildfires in the Lake Tahoe Basin better. And I was impressed at how bipartisan and how much agreement there was across the parties between the Republicans and the Democrats that Lake Tahoe is a place worth saving, and that these are issues that really do need to be addressed.
Well, and I would note, as I mentioned before this program started, there are only 2 senators per each state, regardless of how little or how much the population is. So given the fact that we have on one side, we have a state with a very large population, 38 million people, and on the other, less than 10% of that, the other state, the senatorial thing is what brings it equal, number one. And number two, it is about money, because that comes from the federal level, not the state level.
Yeah. And we have a lot of Dianne Feinstein has put the Lake Tahoe Restoration Act into Congress again to put another $400 million or so into the budget for restoring Lake Tahoe.
$415 million, but that's over a 10-year period. So we have to recollect that that's about $40 million a year, which is, in the scheme of things, probably not a lot of money.
But of course, the private sector puts their share in too. $300 million over the last 10 years in the private sector recently, plus Nevada and California each make a contribution that together sums up to something similar to the federal government. So this Lake Tahoe Restoration Act will be very similar in terms of its economic impact to the first Lake Tahoe Restoration Act after the first Tahoe Summit, because once California, Nevada, and all of the other elements are in, we will have another $1.6 billion or so over the next 10 years to put into restoring Lake Tahoe. So I'm getting the wrap signal. It's time to go to break. If you want to contact Gary, go to email tahoefuture@gmail.com. We're going to go back out to the Tahoe Summit and hear from some of the people at the Tahoe Summit who were agency heads, and particularly hear some about the Sustainable Tahoe Geotourism Expo that's coming up September 6th and 7th in Lake Tahoe, or 7th and 8th in Lake Tahoe.
Hi, my name is Jesse Patterson. I'm the Deputy Director for the League to Save Lake Tahoe, and we're here today at the Presidential Summit to talk about some of the work we do for Lake Tahoe. In particular, we like to advocate for strong environmental regulation. We educate folks on what some of the issues are with facing Lake Tahoe, and then we collaborate with other agencies to find solutions to these issues while the whole time engaging the community. Today's summit is particularly important because they're going to talk about some of the issues like climate change facing the lake and how that affects aquatic invasive species and fine sediment, which affect water clarity. Water clarity is our primary focus here, as is water quality with the League to Save Lake Tahoe. We have a couple programs that focus particularly on aquatic invasive species and fine sediment. One is called Eyes on the Lake, where we educate the community about how to identify aquatic invasive plants and report on their locations so we can control them easier. And Pipe Keepers has trained citizen monitors monitor turbidity and fine sediment going into the lake from pipes around the lake basin. So this helps connect neighborhoods to the lake and those impacts. This is just some of the work we're working on and will be addressed today by the summit.
Hi, I'm John Hara, and I'm here with Sustainable Tahoe and attending the summit. And Sustainable Tahoe is all about helping to showcase models of success of sustainability at the lake. And what we're promoting this year is our Tahoe Geo Tourism Expo, which is all about sustainable tourism. That's something that we're trying to promote. We'd like to show what types of things already exist between what we're calling the three trinomic model. It would be like .gov, .com, and .org. So we try and get the best conservation projects and showcase those. And one of the things that differentiates geotourism, which we're promoting from ecotourism, is that we try and highlight aspects of culture and history as well. So that's what we're promoting this year, and we have a showcase occurring this September 8th at South Lake Tahoe Commons.
Welcome back to Wake Up Tahoe. I'm here again with Gary Bowen. We just heard about the Sustainable Tahoe Expo Geotourism event. Could you you've been involved with Sustainable Tahoe as an organization. Tell me a little about your involvement and what they do.
Well, from the get-go, actually, it was begun through a particular division of National Geographic, which of course we all know to be worldwide. They go into very exotic places all over the place that we otherwise wouldn't be able to see with some of the spectacular photography. But they created an area known as geotourism, with the idea that when you come into an area, say such as Tahoe, there are certain local amenities that otherwise might not get any exposure at all. So Geo Tahoe was really in terms of Tahoe and Sustainable Tahoe, was really geared for the visitor market primarily with the idea that if you wanted to learn something about a watershed or learn something about a particular mountain or a particular situation here that's been long-standing, we would like to take you there and have an expert share with you what that particular thing is about, but you can't necessarily use a car to get there. You have to use either transit if it's available from point A to B, or a kayak, or even a skateboard if you want. But the idea is to try to eliminate the car out of the equation of touring, so that you get more out of it. It's stretched out a little bit. You get a chance to know the participants, not to mention the leader of that particular group. And the one coming up on the 7th and 8th at Lakeview Commons would be new to the South Shore in the sense that typically they're out of the Sand Harbor area and then centered there, or in this case Lakeview Commons. But last year, in previous years, we've gone as far as Pyramid Lake to share some things with the Paiute Indians about the traditional ways of the Paiutes in Pyramid, but as well as trails, as well as watershed issues, as well as fisheries, whatever it happens to be. Yeah, and we usually create a certain combination of things and try to do them a little different each year.
Yeah, and I got to say, I've been to the Sustainable Tahoe Expo 3 years in a row. This will be my third year at it. And it's a great opportunity for people who are interested in the Lake Tahoe area to learn all about the things that are here. I went on a Sugar Pine Foundation walk where the guy went up and got the cones for the sugar pines, and I got to interview I'm sorry, I forget her name. I got to interview the lady who runs the Sugar Pine Foundation. Maria Mercheva, not an easy name to remember or pronounce.
I guess it's worthy of saying that the Sugar Pine Foundation, first of all, I'll make note of the fact that sugar pine cones are by far the largest. They're usually at least 18 inches in size, and they usually have to go up to the top of the tree to prompt them to fall, or in this case, take them off. But more importantly, the Sugar Pine Foundation actually plants 10,000 seedlings of sugar pines a year, because in terms of a geotourism issue, those are the ones that they targeted to cut down when they lined the mines over in Virginia City for the silver mines back in the 1850 to 1860, and that's considered what's the term? Clear cut. We clear cut the forest because they angled all the sugar pines, and those are kind of like, in my opinion, the Cadillac of pine trees. They're a beautiful tree. They're very large.
And they're drought resistant.
And the Sugar Pine Foundation plants roughly 10,000 of them a year in this entire region to try to get that forest back.
Yeah, and in previous years, I met Goldman, who is one of the leading experts on Lake Tahoe. 2 years ago's Tahoe Summit, 2 years ago's Tahoe Expo, I got to interview UNR's leading researcher on Lake Tahoe. The Desert Research Institute does some amazing research on Lake Tahoe, as does the UC Davis Tahoe Education Research Foundation. And they're always there supporting Sustainable Tahoe at the Tahoe Expo, or they have been the couple of years that I've gone anyway. And it's really a great event for people who are interested in the environment and in actually turning out to learn more about some of these great attractions for this natural treasure we call Lake Tahoe. So we're getting toward the end of the show now, and it's such a broad subject. There are so many things left unsaid. What do you want the audience to go home with thinking about?
Well, I think in the global work that I do, for example, I would revert back to Lake Tahoe in the sense that if they have an experience with geotourism or Sustainable Tahoe coming up, or are interested in what Al Gore said in the speech the other day, the main issue is that they become aware that all of the issues that are here are not just about Lake Tahoe. They're actually about where they live as well, because all areas have soil, they have trees, they have vegetation, they have animation by virtue of animals. And it's important to all of them everywhere what we're trying to do here that we can project out into the world.
I agree. I totally agree that Lake Tahoe, as Al Gore said, and as many other people at the Tahoe Summit said, can be a model for the world in working together to achieve global sustainability. Because it takes not just any one country to address global issues. We have to get China, we have to get India on board, we have to get the third world on board to be able to successfully address these issues. We have to build our technology. I read just this morning that one of the leading experts in solar technology has revised his estimate of when solar will become cost competitive to coal down to like 2030.
It's actually...
in some countries, it's already putting the coal industry out of business. In Germany, they're having terrible problems with unemployment in the coal areas of Germany because solar has gotten so cheap in Germany that it's putting the coal plants out of business, and good riddance, in my opinion. But
well, just to put that into policy context, Germany was so far ahead in solar policy anywhere in the world that when Fukushima happened in Japan, it was very easy for them to step back, take a really quick look and say, you know what, we don't need nuclear power at all. And they shut all 18 of them down based on how far ahead they are in solar. If that's not a model for the whole world, I'm not sure what is.
I totally agree.
Because in this case, the global issue, and I just want to say this as we finish, the 20 countries that I'm working with people in right now, it's above politics. There's a certain level of human spirit that suggests it's not all about politics and it's not all about money. We're going to have to do something, and we're going to have to change some of the ways that we do things. That's the level that I'm working with a number of people in languages that I don't even speak, except that Google nowadays is so good they can send me a document in Portuguese from Brazil, for example, and all I have to do is translate it, and it translates. Yeah. So, and that's a great boon. There are still some nuances of language and nuances of choices of words of things that we have to work out, but that's part of human communication, so we work it out.
Well, Gary, I'm getting the signal that we're out of time. You in the audience, the conversation does not have to end here. Please leave us a comment at wakeuptahoe.com or tweet me at Fabulous Tahoe or at Wake Up Tahoe. If you leave a video response, we will put your video response in the show if it's good. So please, go to wakeuptahoe.com, leave us comments, subscribe to Wake Up Tahoe if you haven't already, thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and we don't usually end our show this way, but since I'm guest host for the day, thank you, and keep Tahoe blue. Bye.